We don't know. You know, some market players saying starting in June, some of them in third quarter next year. This is what we will be monitoring week by week, month by month. At the end of the day, of those Fed tapering or plan of Fed fund rate increase will impact U.S. Treasury yield. Am I correct? I think yeah. Some market player saying yield U.S. Treasury next year, end of next year, saying probably go to 2%. Some of them saying 2.2%. Some of them 2.5%. How best we cope there? Let's then with the global. Then we need to adjust our government bond yield, domestic government bond yield, to respond those changing in U.S. Treasury yield. Why? Because at the end of the day, to attract portfolio inflows. Yield differential and stable exchange rate is interest rate differential, cover and uncover. This is the main measure for attracting portfolio inflows. Of course, we need to compare to other emerging market. You know, those the technique that we continue doing. We have been doing, we now doing, and we will continue doing to do that. So I think the adjustment on the yield differential, government bond domestically and U.S. Treasury, and also stability of the exchange rate is important. How to do that? Of course, we coordinated with the Minister of Finance for interest rate yield differential. Second, for stabilizing exchange rate, our exchange rate purely market mechanism. But if there is huge capital reversal, central bank do not hesitate to come to the market to ensure the adjustment of the exchange rate is orderly. I think that's the main. And most of all, they do not impact our domestic interest rate. Why? Because Indonesia very big liquidity. I injected since last year about 5.3% of GDP, quantitative easing domestically. So I think yield differential of government bond do not need necessary to force me to raise interest rate. I think that's because of abundant domestic liquidity. We will hold our low interest rate 3.5% until early sign of domestic inflation domestically rising. This is our strategy to anticipate as well as mitigate the impact of Fed tapering. So far is good, and we are hoping and confident that will be also working for the next year later.
Right. So if I might clarify, you don't necessarily need to raise interest rates per se to address volatility. You can mop out liquidity from the market.
Yes, that will be enough that we let adjust our government bond yield to adjust U.S. Treasury. Do not need necessary. We need to increase our policy rate.
And I understand that Bank Indonesia's plan is to reduce the amount of excess liquidity in the banking system next year without disrupting lending. I wonder what tools do you have in mind in doing so? Is it the market operations, and how would it work? If you can explain to people like me who do not necessarily trace Bank Indonesia policy day to day.
Thank you, this is excellent question. I've been asking so many times by our friend investor as well as economist. How can you do it? Remember, first thing first, we inject so much liquidity since last year, 840 IDR trillion or 5.3% of GDP. That's why in the banking now, very abundant, very large excess liquidity. You can measure the liquid asset of the bank of a third party now is about 3-4%. In the past, the largest is about 22-23%. So big extra liquidity. So if next year I reducing a bit by bit of this extra liquidity, 34%, then this is our statement, my statement, our reduction of liquidity and the banking will not compromising the ability of the bank to extend land as well as to purchase of the government bond. The bank can still be able have access liquidity to lend, provide lending for business as well as purchase government bond. You ask me how to do it. Many ways to go to Rome, right? So I will say three of them. First, of course, you ask contraction of monetary operation. That's one thing. We will do that. We can do it. The second, of course, increasing reserve requirement. Remember, last year, since the pandemic, we reduced our reserve requirement. The primary reserve requirement we reduced about 2.5%, as well as the secondary buffer. So by raising reserve requirement, once again, very calculated, calibrated, and also sequentially timely, we can be able to do that. Do not compromising the ability of the bank to provide lending as well as purchasing government bond. The third way is to also harmonizing or well orchestrate with the way we do external exchange rate. Remember, we are when there is a pressure, we sell our dollar, and then actually also we contracted our economy. So I think this is the way that we are doing those way that we can be able to reduce gradually, well calibrated, and I will communicate it clearly to the market how we will do it, how much, and so on when the time comes. Lega.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So, interest rate hikes are something different in terms of addressing currency, but I think Bank Indonesia expects inflation to reach its target next year. Would that be sufficient to consider raising interest rates next year? Or is there any other conditions that need to be met to seriously consider a rate hike?
Our interest rate policy, as you should speak, decision always based mainly by our 2 years forecast of inflation and the growth. So-called the Philip curve in the academic. We balance how the pressure of the inflation raise above our target, as well as the balance to support economic growth. Our current projection, of course, we need to update, by new information, new indicator. Our current projection, the inflation starting to closing above 3%, or near moving up toward 4%. Sometime the second quarter or probably the third quarter of 2023. Not 2022, 2023. But by nature, interest rate decision need to be forward-looking, need to be preemptive, need to be front-loaded. I think this is so. That's why next year our monetary policy will be starting with, as you asked, reducing liquidity without compromising the ability of the bank to lend, as well as processing government bond, and then sometime at the end of next year, depending on our forecast of inflation and growth, whether there will be some signaling. Signaling, communicating first. Communication is a policy instrument. Signaling whether there will be how is to plan of the interest rate. That's why our statement in the annual address last week, 24 November, I saying our low interest rate 3.5% we will hold until the early sign of inflation. That's actually the meaning and the answer to your question. I hope clear out for you, Laika.
Right. I almost thought that you would predict an interest rate hike late next year, but no, you're only going to communicate your intention if conditions warrant late next year or end next year for a possible hike, probably in 2023, depending on how inflation moves or the forward-looking inflation performs. Am I getting it right?
Yes, yes, you are perfectly.
Okay.
Thank you,
Wonderful.
Laika.
Okay. So may I then go to a somewhat tricky question for you? What
Yes.
is the latest on the government's bill that aims to expand Bank of Indonesia's mandate? Is that still on the table, and how will an expansion of your mandate affect policy making? Would it actually change anything? Because I know your central bank is already very mindful of keeping the economy stable. But adding that to the mandate, would that change how you do your job?
Well, let me say this. Let me say this. First of all, the independency of the central bank will continue to be maintained. My president, our president already assured that no question again about independency of central bank. Your question is about the mandate. We already do it. Even though our law saying our main mandate is to achieve the stability of the value of currency, meaning target inflation and stabilizing exchange rate, but do not stop there. The early decision say this maintaining the value of currency is in conjunction to support our economic sustainable economic growth. Second,
Right.
de facto we already do it. De facto we already did. In any policy decision, whether interest rate, whether macro prudential, and any five of our policy instrument, which is monetary policy, macro prudential, payment system, money market deepening, inclusion, always the balance between stability and growth. So the so-called expansion of the mandate actually basically formalizing our practice as well as in the past on the elucidation of the article into the main article. So practically there is no change. We already do it. I think that will be the answer to your question, Leica.
Right, very clear. So I understand there's another idea in the bill about Bank Indonesia's you currently buy bonds to kind of fund the fiscal deficit as a temporary measure to counter the pandemic. In the government bill there's a idea about making that a permanent instrument to combat a crisis. Is that a feasible option for you? What's the pros and cons of such steps from your perspective?
Yes, indeed. We purchase government bond from primary market. This is, first of all, this is extraordinary condition because of the pandemic. This is not normal practice. The normal practice is the budget deficit of the government cannot exceed 3%. The normal and prudent practice of monetary policy, central bank cannot be allowed to purchase government bond from the primary market. The central bank can purchase government from secondary market, but not the primary market. That's the normal that we already are during so many years. But pandemic, who won pandemic? Who can foresee pandemic? How the impact of pandemic, and mostly the impact of the pandemic to the human right, to the health right, to the people right. I think that's the basic. So the government already issue quote unquote the emergency law, the extraordinary law, which is law number 2, 2022, which is only apply for 3 years, 2022, 2021, 2022. I think that under this emergency quote unquote law, the fiscal deficit can exceed 3% and declining next year about to 4.7%. Under this law, the extraordinary law, the central bank being allowed to purchase government bond from primary market. So in short, to answer your question, this is not normal practice. Only practicing to these 3 years. That's legal consideration. The second consideration is, of course, both Minister Sri Mulyani and myself, we are professional, we are technocrat, we are academician. We always under prudent fiscal and monetary policy. We discuss how best to implement those laws. The purchase of government bond on the primary market last year going to what so-called the public good. The public good is, mainly for, a social program for helping the people to eat, to cover their loss of the job, have incentive for SME, those the public good. This year and next year, we added 215 idea trillion this year and next year 224 trillion for health costs. Imagine, Lega, you are facing this Delta variant. Nobody expect. And you are facing this by this mean people are dying. And hospital need also, support. That's why how can the central bank just silent when the people need help and the Minister of Finance need financing. So this year, next year, we added the third agreement. The government, the central bank purchase government bond from primary market 250 idea trillion and next year 224 idea trillion for covering health costs to purchase vaccine. Otherwise, we cannot, to cover the cost of the hospital, to also to cover the cost of my, our college, they're in the front line to save life. Those medical budget in the government budget this year and next year. Those the second agreement, the third agreement from the central bank. This is just another quantitative easing. We doing quantitative easing through the bank, but it's not spilling yet in the real sector because the real sector need help from the fiscal. This is another of quantitative easing, which is coming, channeling through the fiscal, which is actually also well thought. So those three reasons there. One, legal under the emergency law, number 2, 2023.